This is my points that I'd like to make on moment's notice for week 5 of the Analyzing Jazz Structures class. Whoops, sorry about that. Get back down here to it. And your points this week, this was a very strong week for everybody for, all the points that you highlighted in this. There's a couple that I'd like to at least mention and at least hip you to if you haven't heard it. I kind of have it on in the background right here. It is the SF Jazz Collective's version of this, which is on the album 2. Obviously, this is Spotify, and it's on there if you haven't checked it out. They do a couple of pretty cool things with this, and as I've highlighted this group in past analyses that we've done, their work on this tune is pretty hip to check out. It might not be as much of a stretch as what they did on Sister Sadie, like I was showing you that, but still, nonetheless, there's some pretty cool stuff on here. So that said, a couple things on this going with the modules. The first one, the form of this tune being ABAC. You could also, I guess, at the end, if you were splitting hairs, if you wanted to call this almost like a D section, where you have the pedal at the end. For me, if I were blowing on this, or if I were being asked what the form was, I would just call this a C section and just have it be an elongated C section, being 14 bars. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the 8-bar pedal at the end, including the 2-bar break. Don't forget about that, which is all part of the form. But an ABAC form, and 38 bars. 8 goes back, repeats, 24, 30, and then 8. So 38 bars on the form. Module 2-4 is the breaks and other devices. And on this tune, there is the last 8 bars. It's the use of a pedal point. It's a stretch of the form. 38 bars isn't something we're used to seeing. 32 is definitely more along the lines of it. And where this tune cycles back to, it really cycles home, right? It's a 3-6-2-5, but the use of the B flat and creating that pedal, it creates a nice extension of the form, and it's used in such a way that adds so much harmonic motion getting back to the top of the form. And, myself, I'm not really a rides guy. I don't really like amusement parks all that much. But when I think of this tune and this spot right there, I just feel like the whole tune you're blowing through, and it's, obviously the tempo is usually up on this tune. There's a lot of changes, a lot of vocabulary to get to. But when you get to the end, it's almost like that climb up the roller coaster. Like you have a chance to breathe and catch your breath. And it's a really great device because the rhythm section can really create a lot of energy on the pedal. And even on this SF Jazz Collective recording, a lot of harmonic motion and a lot of rhythmic intensity is created during that pedal section. So it's a really, really great device. Again, not that I guess the tune has to end this way, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? If we had a typical AABA tune, we'd be at bar 31 right here. So we would have 2 bars left. Well, we're coming from F minor and B flat 7. E flat major, C minor, F minor 7, B flat 7 brings us right back home. Right? So it could be a very straight ahead 1, 6, 2, 5 here, but it's not. It's its own separate 8-bar add-on at a spot which is a pretty common place to just cycle back to the top of the form. So it's a really interesting use. It's a great device that creates a whole bunch of motion getting back up to the top of the form when all of the loops and all of the screaming starts if you were on the roller coaster. The 3.2 module is the one on groove, styles, and feels. On this SF Jazz recording, they do a pretty loose, almost like a I don't know what kind of almost like a mambo-esque inspired groove happening on the vamp at the, or excuse me, the pedal point at the end. There's definitely something with a straight 8th happening as opposed to swung all the way through. So it's a pretty cool device, a pretty cool switch that the drummer's playing on this recording in particular. Module Module 3-4, the rhythm section involvement. And, on a tune like this, in small group music, obviously if you're playing big band, there's going to be, I think, much more opportunity for the whole ensemble to play tutti, to play the exact same phrase, the exact same rhythms together. It's kind of the nature of the beast. And in small group music, I feel like that's a really effective device because the freedom that small group music brings on, right? Interpret the melody, maybe you have a counter line going underneath of it. There's not really, I would say, how can I word this eloquently? I don't think that ensemble playing from the perspective of an arrangement, I don't feel like that's one of the key elements of small group music. It really thrives on improvisation and allowing the performers to stretch. Obviously, it's not to say that that's not a part of it, but I guess when you do hear it, it almost strikes you because you're not used to hearing it that much. So and I'm talking about everybody involved here, the drums, the bass, the piano as well. Everybody's playing this figure up at the top. So there's an ensemble unison with regards to rhythm happening on, boot up, boot up, boot up, ba. Everybody's playing the exact same thing. So that in my opinion, is a pretty important effect of this song. The straight ahead part, right? Once we get to right here, it says the first ending, but once we get to that C minor chord, everything's kind of business as usual. But the fact that everybody's playing the same figure, no real fills or anything like that in between, it's at least to this chart, something that stands out to me. From the harmonic analysis perspective, as a lot of you pointed out, definitely a cycle harmony tune. There's a lot of 2/5 vocabulary happening here. However, not always is it resolving to 1, right? A lot of 2/5, but not necessarily resolving to 1. Let's see, what else do we have here? Module 4-7 is, let me get my sheet over here. Oh yeah, the pedal usage, right? So this is, in my opinion, a great instance of a tune using a pedal device to create a lot of motion heading back up to the top of the form. And the other thing that's, I guess, a big point of it, kind of tied in with the harmonic rhythm. Everything's pretty much 2 chords to the bar or 1 measure for the whole chord. Then at the end, you have 8 bars essentially on B flat sus, right? I mean, F minor 7 is an extension of B flat sus, E flat triad, or F minor, sorry, just sticking to the triads here. I'll stick to this sheet. But G minor, that this is really, I guess if you want to put the D in there, maybe you got an instance of where it's not a true sus sound. But for the bulk of this 8 bars right here, it's essentially B flat sus, that open free sound. But you've got 8 bars of it. It's so different from the harmonic rhythm perspective of having a chord every bar or 2 chords per bar. Just such a stark, drastic difference. And then the melody on this one, as a couple of you guys had pointed out, and to my analysis and my point of it, I think it's a lyrical melody. I mean, if we look at from the top, the tune is in E flat. We don't have a non-diatonic note until we get all the way down here on the B natural. That's a long time, and the harmony does not stick in the key of E flat by any stretch. So that's a really interesting point, and I think it was James who brought up that it kind of has a Wayne Shorter-esque, or that was, I think that was on another tune. Might have been the Gregory is Here, I think his point was on that. But I do think there's an element here that, a common theme that we've talked about where you have a very diatonic melody, but the harmonic treatment of it really, I guess, it can almost cloud how diatonic the melody is. So this is a great example of a very, very E-flat melody, but how it can be treated, right out of the chute in the key of D, in the key of E-flat, in the key of G-flat, then the key of C. D, it just moves everywhere. But the melody itself is very diatonic and true to the key of E-flat. So those are some points on this tune. I really enjoyed your work and reading all of your answers and I guess your own analysis with that. So hopefully this Again, enhances and provides maybe some perspective. And I think you should check out that SF Jazz Collective recording too, if you haven't. If you have further interest in diving into this tune. So, best wishes, everybody. Talk soon.